Interesting.
Is one of the most effective politicians, whatever you think of the policy and him as a person, just as a politician, just understanding that always lean in to being more who you are. The people are not savvy about issues, but they smell a phony a mile away. And that kind of shit, nobody else does it. You know, there's a couple of times when, look, I've been his biggest critic for good reason. And when he got reelected, I said, I'm not going to pre-hate anything. And then the first week I said, well, there's lots of things I hate because I do. Okay, there's some things I don't hate also, but the way he can do that and sometimes kind of make me go, oh man.
Is for allowing people who are complaining about your tariffs to be permanently labeled as whiny, retarded, sad little bitches.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? And others. We have a couple of senators here. I just don't particularly like them, so I won't introduce. Over the course of this amazing season, the members of this team...
Trust me, this is the moment everyone was waiting for. Bill Maher finally said it out loud. He admitted he actually likes Trump, and now the woke Democrats are completely freaking out. Sure, we know he voted for Kamala, but let's be real. When it comes to calling out the left's corruption and hypocrisy, nobody does it quite like Bill.
The left that I would say they like to do is judge you by your worst moment.
Yes,
and
that's why MAGA is immune, because they can only do it to their own. Donald Trump is truly the Teflon Don. The media cannot take him down.
No.
Because his people reject the basis of the criticism. There's an old expression, you know, that if you have to decide whether or not to care about what someone says about you, the way you start is, well, who said it? What do I think of them? And people have made that assessment about the media. And they have said, you know what? I don't care what you say about him because I think that you allow a lot worse. And I think you're kind of what you say he is. And that's why they're not going to get Hegseth out.
No.
But they would be if it were the Biden administration. They can cancel all day on the left. They cannot take out members of MAGA. Trump would have to go bad on the guy. It would probably have to be a federal case to make him even think about it. And there is a power in that for him.
And honestly, they're just making it worse for themselves. Trust me, when the time comes, everything they've been trying to cover up will be exposed, and they're going to completely lose it. Bill Maher didn't hold back either. He spoke loud and clear, calling out the woke Democrats and saying the truth about Trump that they've been too scared to admit.
Seen him booed. He was on stage with Bill O'Reilly, and they were doing something like this. And O'Reilly, out of nowhere, you know, because he's pretty deferential to Trump. I don't care what he says. But he looks at him and says, let's just get this out of the way. You were vaccinated, right? And Trump says, yeah. Boo. And you got the booster. I know you did, because I got it too, because of our age. Yes, I did. Boo. And he turns and he says, don't you boo me. And they keep booing. And he says, I'm all you got. Don't you boo me. I'm all you got. And they settled down. And it was a really interesting moment.
I mean, Trump
really interesting.
Is one of the most effective politicians, whatever you think of the policy and him as a person, just as a politician, just understanding that always lean in to being more who you are. The people are not savvy about issues, but they smell a phony a mile away. And that kind of shit, nobody else does it. You know, there's a couple of times when, look, I've been his biggest critic for good reason. And when he got reelected, I said, I'm not going to pre-hate anything. And then the first week I said, well, there's lots of things I hate because I do. Okay, there's some things I don't hate also, but the way he can do that and sometimes kind of make me go, oh man, I got to give it up. Like when he did that thing where the guy came in from the Taliban and he said, this is an aerial picture of your house. If during our withdrawal, one American is hurt, just know I know where you live. I was like, oh, can we just play the music now? Because I don't care. It's Donald Trump and he's the worst person ever, blah, blah, blah. I fucking love that.
Mm-hmm.
One time they were doing something was going on with, and he said, you know what? When you come after New York, you got to go through me. It's like, oh, hometown boy. You know, he has those moments that no other politician has. And the Democrats have to find that guy.
And this is exactly what the woke Democrats are missing. Just because you don't like someone doesn't automatically mean they're a bad leader or doing harm. You've got to separate your feelings from the actual facts. When someone asks about Trump, you can't just say, oh, he's been prosecuted, so he's a bad guy. No, you need to actually look at what he's done, his policies, and more. Importantly, his love for America. And here's the crazy part. The same people who bashed Trump turned around and said something wild about Biden. You're definitely going to want to hear this.
Has to convince President Biden that if he runs again, he's going to turn the country back over to Trump and go and go down in history as Ruth Bader Biden. The person who doesn't know when to quit and so does great damage to their party and their country. All of us who like Joe Biden have been struggling lately with the political situation in the Democratic Party. An incumbent we admire who acquitted himself well in a first term, but who even members of his own party don't want to see run for a second, despite a touching letter of recommendation from Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. I kid, they shouldn't have gotten shit for that. If you ask me, do I think Joe Biden can do the job of president? My answer is an unequivocal yes, he can do the job. Do I love everything? No, but that's every president. But government work is done in small, quiet rooms like the Oval Office. And in that setting, Joe's compassion and centuries of experience are pluses. And he's generally made good decisions that got us out of Afghanistan, handled Ukraine, kept the economy chugging, finally got us rebuilding infrastructure, returned a sense of normalcy. There's a term for Joe Biden, but not two.
Honestly, even what Bill said about Biden isn't something I completely agree with. Sure, maybe Biden has done a few good things, but let's be real. It's not nearly enough to change the direction we're heading. That said, I don't hate Biden as a person. I just don't agree with everything he does. The bigger point is what Trump has accomplished just this month alone. It's already making it feel like real change is coming. Even Bill Maher, who's been critical of Trump in the past, couldn't deny that momentum.
Has to convince President Biden that if he runs again, he's going to turn the country back over to Trump and go and go down in history as Ruth Bader Biden. The person who doesn't know when to quit and so does great damage to their party and their country. All of us who like Joe Biden have been struggling lately with the political situation in the Democratic Party. An incumbent we admire who acquitted himself well in a first term, but who even members of his own party don't want to see run for a second, despite a touching letter of recommendation from Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. I kid, they shouldn't have gotten shit for that. If you ask me, do I think Joe Biden is Joe Biden saying, you know what, if you just give me a new law, why doesn't the president can fix this? He already has the existing laws.
And Border Patrol will tell you that right to your face.
I need a piece of paper from Congress to deal with the border. No, you already have that.
That's right. That's right.
So he has cool at this point. It feels like facts must mean BS to the woke Democrats because they've never truly accepted real facts when it comes to their own issues. The only time they acknowledge anything as a fact is when they can use it against the GOP. And to wrap this video up, let's end with an incredible moment. A woman speaking boldly about what it truly means to be an immigrant and an American.
An oligarchy is taking shape of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. Obviously, we've seen the tableau, we're about to see it at the inauguration. Bezos, Musk, and Zuckerberg are all on the dais. I think this is who Joe Biden is.
Tim Cook, I think, too.
Yeah. And the guy from TikTok, we'll get to that. And, you know, these are all the most powerful men in the world because we want to stick it to the elitists. And I don't think Joe Biden is wrong. I mean, he talked about back in the day, 100 years ago, I remember when I don't remember, but I remember reading that John D. Rockefeller, I think at one point was worth 2% of GDP in this country, and they did something about it. They did. They created antitrust, and they broke up Standard Oil. I don't see us doing that with this group, should we?
There's always been a large conversation around, especially on Capitol Hill, regulation of social media companies and how you're going to do that in order to not step on the First Amendment. But I find it very difficult for Joe Biden to credibly hold argument about the tech industrial complex when it has so served Democrats up into this point. He talks about the fact that there is extreme wealth and that this needs to be broken up. Democrats didn't have a problem with that extreme wealth when $1 billion was raised by Kamala Harris in under 100 days to be able to try to fuel her to the presidency. Nobody minded extreme wealth then. They didn't mind extreme power when Joe Biden was able to unilaterally pardon his son for over a decade of alleged or convicted crimes. And they certainly didn't mind extreme influence when both the Biden White House and the Biden campaign were pressuring these social media companies to suppress conversations, stories, the Hunter Biden laptop story, people pushing back on COVID that they didn't like. So while we can definitely have a conversation on the overall merits of regulation when it comes to social media companies and the uber wealthy, if you want to, in this country, but Joe Biden has no credibility to carry.
That right there is the core issue with the left. They never stop to look in the mirror. They don't ever question what's wrong within their own party. The only time they care is when the GOP does something they don't like. That's why it's so refreshing to see someone actually speak up and call them out loud and clear, saying you're wrong without hesitation.
Thinks should be the reality is the reality that he then espouses, even though you know it's not. That doesn't
What he
bother.
talks about is what Americans are feeling every single day, no matter what city in the country you're talking about.
So facts don't matter.
Inflation. Oh, no, they do. Inflation. Let's take that one for a moment. Yeah, the year over year right now is what, 3.4, 3.5%? But the overarching move of inflation from when Joe Biden took office to now is up massively over 20%. Those prices didn't go away, Bill.
Then
They're
say
still
that.
there.
Don't say it's the
They're
worst
still there.
ever. That's a lie.
Because if you're an American under the age of 45 or 45 and younger, like I am, this is the worst inflation you've ever seen. I heard about inflation from my mom under Jimmy Carter, and Reagan had to get that under control. I've never seen anything like this. It's one of the reasons why young voters, young men in particular, are saying, you know what? At least when Donald Trump was president, I had more money in my pocket and I could get more things. Because this Joe Biden guy, he's not getting it done.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Donald Trump,
It feels like facts don't mean much to the woke Democrats because they rarely accept the truth when it comes to their own problems. The only time they recognize something as a fact is when they can use it to attack the GOP. And to close out this video, let's end with an unforgettable moment. A woman speaking proudly and honestly about what it really means to be an immigrant and an American.
Go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
Made a great video about this, why extremism is so interesting. From 30 years ago, in pre-social media, there's no social media at this time, and he essentially nails what's going on with both the right-wing extremists and the left-wing extremists.
Seriously, though, we've heard a lot about extremism recently. A nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother boy behavior, less friendliness and tolerance and respect for opponents. All right, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies and all the goodness in the whole world is in you. So, if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. and that if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. If you want to feel good, become an extremist. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorized enemies. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right, no problem, fine, you still get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different ones. Once you're armed with one of these super lists of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like, and yet feel your behaviors morally